Shall we, I think it's just about 10:30, so shall we make a start? Go. Morning everybody, welcome to Full Fire Authority meeting, Friday the 22nd of September at 10:30, and we're here at the Joint Police and Fire Headquarters at Sherwood Lodge. It's good to see the Commissioner here with us. Morning Caroline and everybody else. And obviously we're joined by a range of officers as well today. I'm going to move straight into the full agenda for today. So the first item on our agenda is apologies for absence.
Chair, apologies from Tom Hollis.
Apologies from Councillor Hollis. Anybody else? No? Thank you very much, Kath. Item 2 then is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from any members or officers in relation to any items on the agenda? Not seen any indications. Thank you, colleagues. Item 3 then is our minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of July for our confirmation.
They will need to follow. They will be
Let's
the next
follow.
meeting.
Let's follow. Item 4 then, colleagues, is Chair's announcement. So I just want to start by the incredibly sad news of the loss of Sergeant Graham Saville. Members will have followed closely the recent events, and it was absolutely awful to see somebody in the line of service, in the line of duty, lose their life whilst trying to assist somebody who was clearly in distress on the train line at north of Nottinghamshire. I know colleagues here in Nottinghamshire Police and in Police and Crime Commissioner's Office will have felt that incredibly keenly, but so too will have Sergeant Graham Saville's family. So our continued sympathies are with his family and his colleagues at this time, and it is a sobering reminder of the dedication that our emergency services colleagues put to the community and the risk that they take every day that they come to work. So our deepest sympathies and condolences, and I know that's been conveyed through colleagues, but if that could be passed on, please, Commissioner, that would be very much appreciated. But just a brief note in terms of changes round nationally. Obviously we would inform the Fire Authority if there are changes in the Cabinet in terms of minister responsibilities, and clearly we're not far from a general election. Changes in shadow ministerial responsibilities clearly have an impact on us in terms of the service. I think it's incredibly positive news that we've recently had a shadow cabinet reshuffle announcement that sees Nottingham North MP Alex Norris appointed to the role of Minister for Policing. It clearly provides us with a huge opportunity, given that Alex is a local constituency MP, because Alex's brief will include fire within that responsibility as well. And Alex, as well as many of our MPs across the city and county, have always been big supporters of what we've done here at the service. So we will be sending a letter of welcome in Alex's new post, and the Chief Fire Officer and I intend to meet with him to discuss the challenges facing the sector as soon as possible. And of course we'll continue conversations with the rest of our MPs as well across the county and city. Chief and I recently met with our counterparts from Derbyshire as part of a long-standing arrangement to build relationships. It forms part of our Future 25's programme recommendations, which was approved by members last year. And from the meeting, it was agreed, which I hope colleagues will agree with, that we ought to have a joint member event, not just for the two chairs and the chief fire officers, but for all members, to be arranged as soon as possible, so that members can have a discussion about the shared issues that we face. I know, obviously, when we've talked about fire cover reviews previously, there have been questions asked of the Chief Fire Officer about the mutual aid and the response across borders between Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire and Leicestershire. Clearly, there are some very similar challenges for us as a service, but also for us as elected members representing areas within the city and county with our colleagues in Derby and Derbyshire. So we think that'll be a good opportunity, and hopefully colleagues will be supportive of that. There have been some recent changes in the HMICFRS, in His Majesty's now Inspector of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services. I recently met alongside the Chief Fire Officer, our new HMI Inspector Lee Freeman. He had the opportunity to meet with representatives of staff networks as well and our trade unions. I found the discussions incredibly positive and meaningful. I think we created a good first impression, and obviously we've got our inspection early in 2024, which is absolutely critical for us. I think it's fair to say some of the goalposts have changed in terms of the new inspection regime, so there's going to be a challenge for us. There are new tiers now in terms of the inspection regime, and effectively I think good has now become something.
We've got adequate.
Adequate, yeah. So good's become adequate, and then there's a good, and then there's a requires improvement. So the goalposts have slightly changed, but we need to give it our all in terms of that inspection, which I know everybody in the service is doing. A really positive item for us, and thank you to colleagues in our staff networks and also to the principal officer team for this, and particularly Craig, I know, has followed up conversations at a national level that we've managed to secure the Asian Fire Services Association conference for 2024 to be hosted here within our neck of the woods in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. So that will be plans being put in place now at the moment, and I know colleagues who are on the Fire Authority will want to be involved in the conversations about planning. There'll be an opportunity to showcase our service, but also I think the good story we've got to tell in terms of diversity within the service as well. And then the final item, no, actually the penultimate item in terms of Chair's announcements, people will have noted, Leanne has circulated this, that we agreed at Group Leaders meeting recently that there will be a slight change in terms of the way that reports are presented. So the changes include a moving of the crime and disorder implications into the legal implications section, so that will include the crime and disorder issues, the addition of an environmental and sustainability implications section, which I think is crucial given the challenges and given our commitments in the CRMP, and an expanding of the equality section to include an ethical aspect within that section. It means now that our reports are in line with those strategic commitments that we've got in our CRMP. Hopefully colleagues will be fine with that. It's just a presentational change rather than a substantive change. And I wanted to finish, colleagues, just perhaps most importantly by saying a huge thank you to somebody who's given, I think, the service and the authority tremendous service and support over the years that she's been with us. It will be our Head of Finance and Treasurer's last meeting, Becky's last meeting in terms of full Fire Authority. I think she's got a final Finance and Resources committee left, but it'll be the last full Fire Authority meeting. So on behalf of everybody, Becky, I know including our colleagues at the police, I want to say a huge heartfelt thank you for the work that you've done. I think it's fair to say wherever you stand in the sort of political yardoo and debate about funding of fire services, the last few years particularly has been incredibly challenging to try and forecast and plan a budget year on year, and I think you've done it with absolute distinction. You've been first class in terms of support you provided to me. I know Councillor Clark will attest that as his role of Chair of the Finance and Resources Committee. You've always been very honest, very candid, and I've certainly found every report you've written in terms of finance very, very easy to understand as somebody who is a layman in terms of this. So you've been absolutely brilliant, Becky, and we will miss you massively. So on behalf of the entire Fire Authority and our colleagues at the police, a tremendous thank you, and we wish you lots of good luck for the future, and please do keep in touch as well.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Councillor Clark?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I endorse all the things you said about Becky, and the thing I've found is not the fact that she's just a very nice person to really, to talk to, and she's got a caravan to
Always helps.
chatting about the woes of trying to pull a caravan about. But what I've found is, and I've got loads of years on these things now, that all the documents you put before us, all the reports, etc., are pretty easy to understand. And I'm an ordinary secretary, not what I knew university was, but I can understand them, and I thank you for that. But we will miss you because it's not only just the fact of doing the job. You've got to smile with it, you present it in that manner, and wish you well for the future and the family.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Councillor Fielding?
I'd want to say a real big thank you over the support and citizenship complex situation which you explained, supported us in training to be able to deliver what is needful, what is probably important for people's health and well-being going forward. And I really wish you well. Wish you great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fielding. Councillor Wheeler?
Yeah, just take the comments from me, Becky, on behalf of our group, thank you very much for all that you've done for the Fire Authority, and as I said before, with the reports, it's always easy to read, actually understand that's what we're here to do as well, not trying to drown us in technical speak and everything else. It's massive factly in the real world that we can all make a proper decision on, so yeah, thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you. Can I just say it's been a real pleasure working here. I've really enjoyed my time here. I'm moving on to Tamworth Borough Council, so it's a bit closer to home, more for personal reasons as much as anything, but I have really enjoyed my time here, so thank you all ever so much.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you, colleagues. So I'm going to move on to our first substantive item on the agenda, which is our statement of pay policy, which is on page 3 of your agenda pack. And this is going to be introduced, I think, by Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you'll see on it, the report in itself is fairly straightforward. This is something that comes annually to members. I'd refer you to the attached appendix, which lays out what the pay policy must cover. There's one recommendation in terms that the members approve the pay policy attached to Appendix A. These statements can only be considered by the full fire authority. They can't be delegated to committees, hence why it's here. And a lot of the things that might generate questions, a lot of what you see in the pay policy or agreements are set at a national level through NJCs. They're not something in terms of determined locally by members and fire authorities, although you do have to apply those national agreements unless you clearly veer them locally. Moving on to page 5 then, from 2.10 down, where it says pay policy 22-23, some of the main changes have actually just been drawn out that I kind of refer members to. There's a reference there into the gender pay gap. I could kind of big this up and say there's a slight improvement. We kind of need to own the fact there's still a gender pay gap. And that is something that we can give you assurances of. We are working really hard to try and solve that. We know it's not easy, but that doesn't stop us working really hard to try and deal with that clear and obvious issue. The pay policy itself clearly gives complete transparency. We're online. It's available to members of the public to scrutinise and query, as well as our workforce, as well as members. There's been some updates to national pay awards. Obviously, there's been pay settlements, and we're already going into the next round of pay settlements where the employees will be registering their claims for next year. Hopefully, what we'll be able to do, rather than have a 1.5 year delay, hopefully we'll be able to actually plan that in and they'll arrive when we need them to arrive, and that will smooth out some financial planning for authority. There's some increases in national rates of pay as chief fire officers. What you'll probably be aware of, that this authority every 2 years does a benchmarking exercise across the fire sector of really kind of the previous kind of family groups, and those benchmarking exercises are already underway now, led by our head of people. So we'll hopefully get something back. And the last time the fire authority was deemed based on the information, there was no requirement to adjust pay on that basis, and you were still in line in terms of your principal officers. We've had confirmation of 2 compensation payments, and I raised that issue in terms of linked in terms of redundancy, because they sat under the Futures 2025 programme, where we made some redundancies based on the first elements of the workforce review, and that work is still ongoing. And unless there's any questions, Chair, the appendix is attached. Clearly, if there are any questions that we can help members with, please reach out and contact myself, and if I can't answer the question, I'll find somebody that can.
Thank you, Chief. Any comments or questions on the statement of pay policy? I'm not seeing any indications. The recommendations are on page 3, which is that members approve the statement of pay policy attached to Appendix A. I'll move those. Somebody happy to second? Seconded. By the Vice Chair. All those in favour? All those against? They're agreed unanimously. I don't see any against. Everybody voting in favour. Thank you, colleagues. Item 6 then is an update on the areas for improvement from the 2021 HMICFRS inspection. And I think, Craig, are you introducing this? Or is this going to be
Candidate's going to go through this, Chair.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the regular update that summarises progress against the areas for improvement that were given to us by inspectors in our last inspection, which is approaching 2 years ago now. Members will be aware that the scrutiny around the individual AFIs comes under each of our individual committees, and that's where the detail is examined. So the purpose of this report is just to summarise for information where we're at in terms of being on track or not. If members look to paragraph 2.3, there's a reminder there of the individual AFIs that we're working towards. And just to remember that in our inspection that we had preceding the 2021 one, we had 28 areas for improvement.
In our last inspection, we just had 4, and they're laid out there as a reminder. I'm not planning to go into any detail around the individual areas for improvement, but of course can answer any questions. But just quickly, in summary, at 2.4, our approach to evaluation, you'll see there we're looking to embed this systemically within the way that we approach work, rather than look at just add-on pieces of work around evaluation. And so once that is fully in place, we'll be looking to close this down early in 2024. Area for improvement 2 is around the risk-based inspection, and the majority of this work is now fully complete. There have just been a couple of technical issues that have held us up, but again, we're confident we should be able to close this area for improvement down early in the new year. Area 3 is around well-being, and there's a comprehensive package of work that has been done to ensure that our workforce is fully aware of the well-being offer that is available to them, and indeed we've looked to strengthen that offer itself, and we will be bringing that through for closure in January 2024. One of our thorny areas has been around the risk information reliability on our mobile data terminals, and this has been a long-running story, and there continues to be some issues principally related to technical support from our provider Sistel. And but nevertheless, the work that we're putting in place to mitigate this means that we are confident we should be able to close this AFI down early in the new year too. And so in summary, Chair, that is probably all that I would seek to convey.
Thank you very much, Candida, and thank you to everybody for the hard work to close off these final areas for improvement and for the commentary that's set out. This was obviously discussed at length at the recent group leaders meeting, but I'll throw it open for any comments or questions. Councillor Bailey.
Hi, so I'm on the Community Safety Committee, just for context, so I won't go into the detail that I'm sure the committee has. So my question is in relation to areas 1 and 2.
Yep.
It says that January 3 being found that PhD students from Nottingham University will be undertaking the external evaluation. This goes for area 1 and 2. I suppose my question is this the same PhD student? And is there any other external evaluation that's going to be taking place to close these 2 items, essentially?
Yeah, if I can answer the chair. So, yes, it is the same PhD student through Nottingham University. We've got quite a history of working with the local universities in terms of that external scrutiny. So it is the same student who's undertaken those 2 pieces of work to have that consistency across 4 work streams in total within the service. In relation to other evaluation that's ongoing, so for area 1, which looks at evaluation in its entirety, we are reviewing our internal evaluation framework, and we continue to evaluate activities with partners, our engagement with communities, and evaluation is embedded within our annual planning. So this is very much reviewing that framework and making sure that it is properly scrutinised and providing the assurance to both the strategic leadership team but also through committee in terms of that. Regarding the risk-based inspection programme, there'll be a paper coming to the next Community Safety Committee which updates further on that, but we're also carrying out an evaluation or a gap analysis against the newly published consultation by the National Fire Chiefs Council on identifying high-risk premises. So that really gives us a standard benchmark to evaluate our risk-based inspection programme against that. So that's been carried out by our Head of Protection, and we're continuing to do that.
So is that PhD the only external one?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. And with respect to area for improvement 3, I know it mentions the concerns that the employees are unaware of the support available. Now, one of the things that you often find is that unless that's really, really embedded, often, no matter how many more frequent emails that get sent out, you'll just click delete because you got so busy. So unless you got that in-person reminder from managers, supervisors going, oh, are you aware of this training available? Oh, have you thought about doing this? Often it won't really ever embed itself. So I suppose my question is in terms of the 2.15, it says that an independent survey is commissioned by Derby University to assess the assess mental health provision. Is that the only other external assessment that's taking place for that? And if you could just go a bit more detail about what that's entailing, is it what kind of survey is it? I suppose as well internally, are we actually going out and asking employees, are you finding these more frequent emails helpful? Do you know any more information? Because unless these emails are unless it's actually getting through to people, I don't really think you can almost close the item in January unless you can actually come back and say, at last inspection we didn't do as well as we could have. Unless you'll be able to say, we actually have seen improvements, people are telling us that they're more aware, you almost can't really even close that item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. I think the Chief wants to come in and then I'll come back to either Candida and Damien, both.
Yeah, there's a couple of points on your questions, Councillor. So the evaluation, does it get looked at externally? The HMI look at it.
Yeah.
So it's a broader inspectorate. They focus on things like evaluation, what we're doing. There is some work ongoing about bringing capacity in, but that's not about bringing a person in. It's about making sure it's culturally evaluation is part of it, and that's some way that SLT are kind of dealing with. You point on kind of well-being. Again, the inspectorate look at the people element, so well-being is looked at in there. On the first inspection, we said that we've got really good practice, we just didn't have a strategy. So we didn't have the document that said we did all those good things, we dealt with the strategy. And they said at our last inspection, we'd got really good things in place and our provision was good, so I think we need to make that point, our provision is good. There were some staff in the organisation that said they were unaware of what's available. So things like emails, comms that are going ahead, staff management briefings with a briefing that they go out to teams and brief their staff. And also I think in service delivery they have watch manager engagement days where they'll talk about well-being. So we certainly don't send an email. I know it's only one of the points, but we certainly don't do that. I think there's a multiple front approach to well-being. And my ask of the staff is that be curious about what's available as well. So things like staff networks. I think the thing about the Derby University, only yesterday myself and Nick Sharman had a conversation with them that we're going to continue that research on specifically into mental health. Derbyshire Police are working with them at the moment, and some of the team that the university works with across multiple universities and work in high performance areas. So what we're hoping for is that they'll come in and have a look at that from a mental health perspective. That's a broader knock-on into well-being, but we've been as broad as we can be with the resources we've got. I want to reassure members the provision we have, if people need it, is really, really good. It's that awareness thing that we kind of really need to push home.
Make sure it's embedded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councillor Bailey, anybody else want to add anything else? No? Okay. Any other comments or questions? No? I'm going to move the recommendation, which is on page 23, which is that members note the progress to address the improvements required and continue to support the approach of the Chief Fire Officer for addressing the areas for improvements. I'll move those. Are they seconded? Seconded by the Vice Chair. All those in favour? Anybody against? No. They're agreed unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. Item 8 is changes to establishment annual report. This is a report of the Chief Fire Officer. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead. I'm getting ahead of myself. Item 7, sorry, colleagues. Implementation of resourcing to risk. This is the update report on the issue in relation to Ashfield, and this is going to be introduced by Damien.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so members will be aware that at the July Fire Authority meeting, the approach of the Chief Fire Officer in terms of reallocating our resources to facilitate the whole time return to 24-hour crewing at Ashfield was supported. And as part of that, we committed to updating members as that process progresses. So from that meeting, and indeed slightly before that, we have plans in place to look at the best use of resources within the current establishment to make sure that we could return Ashfield by the end of November. And the good news is that that is all in plan and underway and on track for that implementation by the end of November to be back at full-time, whole-time 24-hour crewing at Ashfield. We've undertaken a project approach to this, and that's looked at a number of risks to the ability to do that. One of those was the current ridership level, so the number of firefighters within the service, and my thanks to all of the teams who've been involved in ensuring that we have opened up a transfer process both to firefighters who work in other services and are currently on call with us, and also current qualified, competent firefighters from across the UK, and we've had an overwhelming response to that. Also, planning continues in relation to recruitment for up to 40 firefighters next year, which will see the establishment brought back to correct levels. And a lot of hard work is going into currently making sure that we engage with the broadest section of our communities in terms of that recruitment. In addition to that, we're continuing work through the project board, which looks at improvements to Ashfield Fire Station to make sure that it is fit for purpose. The organisation has currently got a piece of work looking at accessibility and dignity at work across all of our stations, and we're incorporating that into the changes which are being made at Ashfield. So we'll have up-to-date and suitable facilities there, and it'll feel and look very much like a nice new station. As part of the project board, we're looking at a range of evaluation criteria, and members will be aware that a number of risks were raised or highlighted at the July authority meeting, and mitigations to be put in place for those. Those mitigations, such as additional training for our incident commanders, additional resourcing in terms of the community risk management plan, are being put in place and progressed. We will continue to monitor after up to the implementation date, and then for a period of 6 and then 12 months after the implementation of whole-time crewing back at Ashfield, just to be able to report any impact that has, both locally within the Ashfield conurbation, but also across the wider service as well, and that will be reported back to members. So we hope that the next meeting will be updated at the December Fire Authority meeting, where we will report on the successful implementation of that at Ashfield Station at the end of November. Chair, quite a short, brief overview, but everything is on track and good progress being made.
Thank you, Damien. Chief?
Yeah, thanks, Chief. I suppose really just a couple of 3 points from me is that you asked us to do something as a fire service, as your leadership team. We gave that commitment, we do that. Hopefully it gives you that kind of reassurance. And what comes with that really is my humble thanks to the whole team, representative bodies, staff networks and everybody for getting us to this point. I knew it was going to be a challenge for November, and we've kind of looked like we're delivering on that, subject to the final kind of details, so that's great. And again, members will be aware this was a kind of data-led decision around risk to communities and resourcing to risk. So I think it's a kind of a good news story in that sense. And I guess really I'm looking forward to kind of like seeing the changes at Ashfield. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. And just before I throw it open to comments or questions, I want to reiterate Craig's point about thanking all of the staff, obviously, have engaged in the way that they have to make this happen, and our trade union colleagues have engaged constructively in the way that they've engaged. I know these decisions are never easy about where resources is stretched and resources is stretched and where it's deployed. I thank you to Craig and his team for the way in which they've engaged in the conversation, but also a tremendous thank you to the Fire Authority for the way that this issue has been dealt with as well, and the discussions that we've had around this issue. I think they've arrived at a very, very positive place for the communities that live in and around Ashfield, and that couldn't have been achieved without all those people that I've just mentioned. So I've got Councillor Gul-Khan first.
Thank you, Chair. You spoke about the number 30, 2.6. I'm really pleased to see that the Fire Authority and the Chief Fire Officer are taking positive action to recruit the diversity and represented group of the future firefighters for recruitment days opening in late September. I also want to know how many BAME community will be including in this large intake process.
Yeah, well, the positive action is ongoing at the moment. We've got one of my colleagues at the back of the room who's kind of basically leading that team. I've just had a very brief conversation this morning. It looks like the percentage of people showing an interest, because we're actually running open days that people have to attend. So at the moment, the figures look as good as they did last time. I think something like 18 or 20%. from Bain community at the moment are showing an interest in becoming firefighters. More of those events will be taking place over the next month, really. So we're looking forward, and I think eventually, I think it was something like 25% or in that area, don't quote me, Councillor, please, but something in that area where it went on to be successful of the intake, so a quarter of the intake from Bain communities went on to be successful applicants in the process. Lots of work ongoing at the moment in terms of that positive action. And again, just to kind of a point, it's a little bit jammed tomorrow, but one of the decisions we made around resourcing to risk, we took 4 posts out of the ridership, and some of that post will be for continuous positive action in terms of our organisational development and EDI work. So it won't stop is the work, and that will continue. So hopefully a quarter of successful applicants will be from underrepresented groups.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Wheeler?
Yeah, thank you for the report and thank you for the work you've done. I think, obviously, in terms of what you managed to do, in terms of the very strictly narrow parameters you gave you is fantastic in terms of where we are now. I think just for our point of view, just be about the reviewing of it, just to make sure absolutely, I know it's mentioned in the report about December fire priority and everything. To me, big standing item on community safety, that a few months just to make sure we are continuing to review based on the changes we've seen. It's, I'm happy with obviously what's been proposed there. We'll just have to keep reviewing it towards it, but thanks for all the work you've done.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Zadrozny?
Thank you, Chair. You'd be surprised if I didn't want to speak on this. I mean, I do want to add my thanks. Obviously, I feel the residents, communities of Ashfield have been very patient in providing evidence and waiting for this change so that they feel safe. And I want to thank the staff, particularly those on the ground who've been very accommodating to make these changes. I think that's really comforting. I'm looking forward to the December meeting to see it implemented. And similar to others, I think the review back later at the 6-month and 12-month review, I'm very happy for it to come to Community Safety Committee. Obviously, I think we've taken it very seriously, but I do think perhaps at least the 12-month one should come back to this chamber. I think, Chair, you also deserve my thanks for steering this through. I know it's been a difficult political decision to make in tough financial challenges, but clearly the evidence base was there and you've followed that rather than anything else, and I thank you for that. My final point is, Damien, I'm not sure if the Fire and Rescue Service are attending the Ashfield Jobs Fair on the 5th of October. If you're not, you can join the other 90 organisations that are coming. I do think it's imperative on us to keep making sure that, particularly in the retained part of Ashfield, that we keep that bubbling up. It's doing well for the first time in a long time, it's going up. But obviously ready for the recruitment drive next year. It's very big, it's a good event, and if you're not, I'm happy to share details with you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rosner. Any other comments or questions? The recommendation on here is that members note the contents of the report, but given there has been unanimous agreement with the comments that have been made, I'm going to suggest that to close this off, which is similar to what we did before, that we just say that members note and endorse the contents of this report, because I'm hearing from the conversations, unless people are giving me a negative look, that people are happy with the approach set out in the report, including around the review, which obviously there have been questions on, and I think Community Safety Committee can pick this up, but I agree with the point about needing to come back to full fire authority. So with that minor amendment, that members note and endorse the contents of this report, I'll move that recommendation. That's seconded? That's seconded. All those in favour? Any against? No abstentions, so that's carried unanimously. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you to everybody involved in that important piece of work. Now we are on to item 8, which is changes to establishment of the annual annual report, and this is obviously a report back from the Chief Fire Officer following our changes to the delegations around personnel and roles within the establishment.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Some members will be new from the last AGM, but members from last year will recall that through the clerk we brought a recommended paper to change the scheme delegation around what the Chief Fire Officer could do around the establishment while staying within the overall pay budget, and those changes would need to be in consultation with the Chair of the Fire Authority. just to make sure that there was that immediate contact for me as your chief fire officer, but that oversight and assurance for authority members that it wasn't just me playing with their chairs at will. So that kind of went in. What I would sort of say about those changes, what I've noticed is the chief fire officer, I think there's still some internal processes and systems that need to kind of push through the old way of doing it as opposed to the new ways of doing it. But it gives us so much more flexibility around actually dealing with issues. So where there are resourcing issues, we can make decisions quicker. I think you're taking kind of 5-6 month decisions down to around numbers of weeks or a couple of months now. So in terms of running the organisation, the thing I get, it's given us a lot more flexibility to actually get on and do the job whilst reporting to the scrutiny and oversight to yourselves. I don't intend going through the 3 tables, but there are details of regrades, deletions and creations within the report. It just gives you a flavour of the kind of areas that we are working in and what we're trying to deal with. And I think when you look at some of those things and read it across at the report, you'll see things like evaluation, you'll see some support roles that are kind of changing, that are more in line with what we're trying to deliver through the community risk management plan. So if there are any questions, Chair, then great, but the details within the paper, but it seems to be working, and the culmination, one of the recommendations this time, we will continue to bring an annual report for your oversight.
Thank you, Chief. Any comments and questions on this report? Not seeing any. The recommendations are that we note the report. I'll move the recommendation. Is that seconded? Seconded. All those in favour? Any against? It's unanimous. Again, thank you, colleagues, for agreeing that. Item 9 then on our agenda is the annual report of information governance for 2022-23, and this is to be introduced by candidate.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is the annual summary report for information governance, which covers a range of different areas that we regularly report on. They are summarised at paragraph 1.3. So it's our overview of freedom of information requests, of environmental information requests, data protection areas of interest, and the report on regulation of Investigatory Powers Act. I think the report is fairly straightforward and self-explanatory, but what I would just say in summary is what we saw last year was an increase, quite significant, although small numbers, in our freedom of information requests. That was principally during the period when we were out to consultation around savings proposals, and there were requests around financial information. I think as well what has triggered an uplift in freedom of information requests has been the national scrutiny that there's been on the culture of the fire sector. In principle, the 2 key reports that came forward from London Fire Brigade and from the HMIC Spotlight report on culture, and those caused us to some people wanting to find out more about what that meant for us at a local level in that more national context. That is really the only key thing that's been of any difference from preceding years. Our performance last year in terms of delivering against the Information Commission's target time-wise it did dip a little bit. But we had 3 months where the post was vacant, that is the Freedom of Information Officer or Information Governance Officer post. And since that post has then been filled, we're operating at over target, as is our habit in previous years. That is probably most of what really needs reporting on, I would say, but open to any questions if there are.
Thank you, candidate. Any questions? Councillor Lee?
A really quick one. Do we know if the requests were made by local people or was it a national, more people from nationally away? Trying to work out the political...
Yeah. It varies. Some of them are from media, really, and that can be at national and local level, and was at national and local level during our year. Some of them would be through political or trade union-based requests. Those came forward definitely, again, both at national and local level. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Butler and then Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may just have touched on the answer to this, but in the Freedom of Information table on page 44, where you've got the categories of queries, there's that generic other that says there were 37. Now, I suspect this could be a long story or it could be a short one. What sort of things do we mean by other? Or is it linked into the comment just made about the links to national?
I think it will be so varied that I'm quite happy to go away and give you a bit of a closer summary, but it could be anything that isn't easily categorised within one of these categories.
I think I understand. I just wanted to be sure in my mind. Please don't go into any trouble by putting the report together or anything. I'm just really curious how they summarise that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Similar line, really. I'm just querying on page 47, there's no financial implications arises from the report. I think that's quite a bit to follow these up. There's quite a lot of office requirements from the query. And how do we deal with persistent people who, under the law have every right to put their case forward and ask for information, but we at the sort of this local government, and that's the county, district or city, are now getting an absolute avalanche of what I call, and it's disrespectful, the keyboard warriors who are taking out so much time of officers when it could be dealing with important work. I'm not against that in information now, but it is now very time consuming. I wonder if we've got a policy to deal with those types of people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
We don't have a policy to deal with those particular kind of people, and I'm happy to say that I don't think we have any vexatious people who are looking to just cause work for us. You'll see in paragraph 2.4 that there are some where we have refused in their entirety those requests, and that is where they are seeking either information that is perhaps personal information, or is information that is readily already in the public domain. And that is quite common, that people want us to provide something for them that they could look up themselves. And I think as our website has improved and become much more accessible over the past few years, and it's something that we're commended for now, it has meant that information is available to people more readily, and that means that we can direct them towards accessing that information in a way that in the past would have caused us work to be done. And there are also areas where information is exempt, for example, around business critical information or sensitive information financially that we wouldn't disclose in the same way as some reports come to this committee are exempt. So there are a range of ways in which we don't do unnecessary work, I would say. And I don't think we're being overwhelmed by people seeking information unnecessarily at this point in time.
So come to a district council.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Thank you, candidate. I'm not seeing any other comments or questions, so I'll move the recommendation, which is that members note the contents of the report. That's seconded. That's seconded by the Vice Chair. All those in favour? All those against? Any against? So that was agreed unanimously. Thank you, colleagues. The next item on our agenda is the exclusion of the public. So it's to consider excluding the public from the meeting during consideration of the following item in accordance with Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 under Schedule 12A, Part 1, Paragraphs 3, on the basis that having regard to all the circumstances, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So I'll move the recommendation. Are all colleagues in favour of that? That's agreed.